Hey there folks, welcome to Spectrum Pulse. We talk about music, movies, art and culture, and this is Billboard Breakdown. So now, we're finally here. 1 year of Billboard Breakdown is finally completed. Over the past 50 plus episodes, I've covered all the eccentricities of the Billboard Hot 100 chart, and it has been an eventful year, between a switch up in release scheduling, the chart spanning weeks for artists too big to fail, and especially in the last quarter of this year, the dominance of Canadian artists at the very top that has tested my running thesis that the Canadian charts are always better. And I'll admit it's been a real learning experience for me too. Billboard Breakdown has done a lot to define this channel, and though there have been many late nights where I swore up and down that after 1 year I'd be done with this, I'm gonna leave that decision up to you guys. If you want me to continue with Billboard Breakdown or revise the format at all, please let me know in the comments. Let us any suggestions or concerns. I'm always grateful for your feedback and your support, especially as it's been probably the most consistent draw across my entire year has been this show, and I really do appreciate that. But enough regular tomfoolery, let's get to our top 10. Now, as everyone could have predicted, Adele just rules the very top with Hello, crushing gains in all categories. It'd almost be boring in its dominance if the song wasn't excellent. What is continuing to try my patience is Hotline Bling by Drake at number 2, which is still picking up some gains on Airplay and YouTube, but it'll be interesting to see how much longer it lasts as the sales are starting to slip a bit. Next is Sorry by Justin Bieber going back up to number 3, which is doing well enough thanks to great sales and huge YouTube and streaming, but radio's been kind of slow to really pick it up, so I'm not sure it'll have a serious shot at getting much higher, at least not anytime soon. It pushed back The Hills by The Weeknd down to number 4, but that's not surprising at this point. It might have gained on YouTube and held steady on streaming, but sales and Airplay are weakening hard, and it looks like it's starting to be on its way out. What's seeming to be sticking around a little bit longer than I expected is Stitches by Shawn Mendes rising up to number 5, which is kind of weird because it's clearly peaked on Airplay and sales and streaming and only decent with no YouTube. It's more inertia at this point against What Do You Mean by Justin Bieber falling down to number 6, and really that's just playing the margins because that song's stronger on YouTube streaming and sales, but it's falling harder on Airplay, and really that's enough at this point. Now this takes the revival of 679 by Fetty Wap and the Remy Boys up to number 7, which I'd argue is less thanks to decent streaming and okay Airplay, and more due to weaknesses elsewhere, like Wildest Dreams by Taylor Swift at number 8. I mean, sure, YouTube got a boost, but Airplay's pretty much in free fall, and sales were pitiful this week. Now this is allowing tracks like I'm Gonna Lose You by Meghan Trainor and John Legend to pick up to number 9, really off of good Airplay and a bit of streaming, and pretty much nothing else. And this takes us to the long-awaited arrival to the top 10 for X's and O's by Elle King. And man, it's nice to see some bluesy stomp return to this part of the charts, although I do question its staying power, with good Airplay and sales basically being the only elements keeping it up this high. It's nice to see it here, but how long it'll last, much different question. Now this takes us naturally to our losers and our dropouts, where we don't have much in the latter category. All Eyes on You by Nicki Minaj, Meek Mill, and Chris Brown exiting and taking Want to Want Me by Jason Derulo with it, finally. And very few losers this week too, both continuing their downward spiral, with Levels by Nick Jonas falling to 99, kind of disappointing there, and Anything Goes by Flora Georgia Line sliding down to 79. And we didn't get a lot of gains this week either, with the biggest going to Justin Bieber's I'll Show You rising to 27. We'll be talking more about Bieber tomorrow, but what's more alarming are the gains for Bryson Tiller, with Exchange jumping up to 76 and Don't going up to 42. I mean, look folks, just because Chris Brown is struggling doesn't mean we need to replace him with this guy. Pulls a bit from Drake as well, and really just is kind of obnoxious. At least you have Lay It All on Me by Rudimental featuring Ed Sheeran, which continues to pick up gains like a colossus, rising up to 42 and showing no signs of slowing down. It'll be interesting to see how much traction that song ends up getting, and mostly a good sign because it's a pretty damn decent song. What won't be gaining a lot of traction are our returning entries, starting with Okay, really, that's not fair. Although this song's only back on the charts thanks to the video, I can see this song charting if only because Sia is an interesting comparison point to Adele. I'd say that Sia as a whole is more blunt and raw than Adele, but less complex in instrumentation and writing, not quite as nuanced, which is where I'd probably give Hello the slight edge over Alive. Now that doesn't make Alive any less of a great song with huge power, even if it does take a little bit to really get going, but I feel that audiences will sadly end up dismissing Sia's very real appeal under the assertion that they're getting something more reserved and dignified with Adele, whereas I'd argue there's room for both of them. Either way, the song is awesome, and I'm definitely curious about that upcoming album. If it's more like this, color me intrigued.
Tell me, is this where give it all up for you. I have to risk it all, 'cause the writing's on the wall.
So, with the release of Spectre, this song has returned to the charts. And just like the movie, I'm kinda mixed on it. The instrumentation is great, especially with the heavier horns. The verses and pre-chorus are incredibly powerful, but that slurred chorus and Sam Smith's falsetto range just sounds nowhere near as good as it should. I have no idea why Sam Smith thought that range was better than his belting tones, which actually have the soulful power that a good Bond anthem needs. On top of it, I can't be the only one who misses Bond anthems with a bit of an edge to all their dramatic swell, which is the other problem here. It's willowy and delicate and has nowhere near the dramatic swell to really drive things home. I mean, I'll give them some credit for trying something new, but reinventions should keep in mind what's worked in the past before going forward, so it'll save them some issues like this. In other words, if I'm being honest, I'd probably end up skipping it. So now on to our regularly scheduled new arrivals, starting with number 96, My House by Flo Rida.
Show me what you do now. We don't have to go wild. Welcome to my house. Welcome to my house.
I can't be the only one who's amazed that Flo Rida is still releasing songs, can I? Of all the artists who managed to survive the club boom and the collapse of it, Flo Rida got through by snagging solid hooks and having as little personality as possible in any of his content. So to hear that he not only released a new EP this year, but that this is his third charting single from it, a little bit startling for me. What's even more startling is that this song's not that bad, mostly through a melodic interpretation from Impossible, a really solid Chantel song from 2010 that Flo Rida flips into something a little bit more lightweight and fun with that low piano line and a gurgling sizzle of a synth line mimicking horns. It's actually not that bad. And sure, the lyrics are pretty much empty platitudes about staying in and having a house party, which if you know Flo Rida's old club bangers, it's nice to know he found a place when the club couldn't handle him right now. But again, for this sort of laid-back track, it's surprisingly likable. So yeah, speaking as someone who has given Flo Rida a little bit of credit and leeway in the past, I don't mind this at all. I'll take it. Number 94, Stand By You by Rachel Platten.
Cause I'm gonna stand by you, even if you can't find heaven. I'm gonna stand by you, even if you can't find heaven. I'll walk through hell with you, love, you're not alone. Cause I'm gonna stand by you.
I have to admit, I was worried about this song. Rachel Platten's fight song was easily the most boring and recycled self-esteem anthem that I've heard all year, next to probably Jessie J's Flashlight, and I had no assumptions that her follow-up would be remotely interesting either. Well, I was slightly wrong there, because this is a bit better than Fight Song. Just a little bit. Most of this you can chart to a distant melody that actually tries to anchor a pretty effervescent chorus, even though if you ease off on the percussion and drums, the melody doesn't really do anything that Katy Perry's Roar or Sarah Bareilles' Brave haven't already done in the past. And as for lyrics, well, I could be cynical and say that Rachel Platten's recycling her self-esteem template, but with all the heavenly imagery, she's positioning herself as more of a guardian angel, which I guess is fine. But again, if I wanted treble key progressions and soaring melodies, I've already got Brave for that, which I like a lot more. Just saying. Number 91, Where They From by Missy Elliott featuring Pharrell Williams.
Sticking out your tongue, girl, but you know you're too young. A bunch of girls do it and the shit look fun. That's how they do it where we from. You know it don't start till 1. That's how they do it where they from. I'm so faded, no exaggeration. Back breaking like a percolation. Boys to the York with some hip spanking. Way I make it drop down like an animation.
You know, we haven't had an album from Missy Elliott in over a decade, and yet, even though I've never really been a huge fan of her music, I completely get why people want to hear Missy Elliott come back. Hell, that was mostly the reason we gave Azealia Banks a career in the first place, to replace her. And I definitely get why people like this song too. The bassy hook is ridiculously catchy, the textured percussion gives a lot of flavor, Missy's still got a ton of personality and charisma, and while the content's nothing really to write home about, especially when you dig into Pharrell's increasingly disconnected references, this brand of hip house doesn't really need to be lyrical as long as the flow and the rhymes connect, and Missy's, they definitely do. Where I think this song loses me a little bit is in the production. Not that it's entirely bad, although it doesn't quite rise to the level of what Timbaland was delivering in the past, but most of the melody either comes through in the sirens or the vocal fragments, and the volume on Missy's voice seems to be constantly shifting. It's weird. That's where we get to that outro, where the tone that bass hit comes through is just one of the worst levels possible. Just feeling ugly and ragged and completely not matching the rest of the song, which strikes me as more of a production error than a choice on Missy's part. Overall, Overall, I do like this track, but I'm not as crazy about it as some are. But then again, that's always been my story with Missy Elliott. I like her, but I don't quite love her. But regardless, I'm definitely happy to see her back. We need artists like her. Number 88, Halo by Jordan Smith.
You know you're my saving grace. You're everything I need and more. It's written all over your face. Baby, I can feel your halo. I pray it won't fade away.
So, did you know that The Voice was back on television? Better question, did you care? What's interesting to note is that where on previous seasons of The Voice we get multiple new chart arrivals, the only one that's shown up here is a cover of Beyonce's Halo by Jordan Smith. And look, he's got a fine voice, he's got big pipes, but am I the only one who thinks this arrangement is completely wrong here? Halo is already a bit of an awkward song for Beyonce because it's not a song focusing on how awesome she is, her main wheelhouse, but she at least elevated it through huge, bombastic, heavenly production, drums and strings and gleaming synths to anchor that piano line. So while stripping it back to guitar and a limp piano isn't a bad choice to match the lyrics, you lose all the power of the original. Look, I never really cared for the song in the first place, but I know why it worked, and this version really doesn't click. And seriously, what's with this week and songs about angels? Number 87, Traveler by Chris Stapleton.
On this earth, show out my heart behind the pocket of my shirt. I just keep rolling till I'm in there, 'cause I'm a traveler. Oh, I'm a traveler.
So with Chris Stapleton now spending a second week at the very top of the album charts, it was inevitable we'd start seeing songs creeping over into Hot 100 to match Tennessee Whiskey. So with the title track, we've got our second taste of Chris Stapleton with an original song, and again, it's not really one of my favorite cuts from that album, but it's definitely more of a neo-traditional track with the steel guitar anchoring the melody, and it's got a ton of acoustic texture. And yes, Chris Stapleton's got a ton of presence and power as a country singer, and the troubadour lyrics are an easy sell for me. So why doesn't it quite click as well as I'd like? Hate to say it, but I think it's a twofold issue. The first being the addition of the backing vocals from Chris Stapleton's wife Morgane, which feel a little out of place in a song about being a lone traveler on the road. Just doesn't quite fit for me. The larger issue comes in the vocal layering. Not only does it feel like her vocals are at the exact same volume as his, which is kind of weird considering how strong his are, but they feel a smidge too quiet against the acoustic and steel guitars, just nestled a shade too deep into the mix to really show off that power and match the great texture elsewhere. Again, I love that Chris Stapleton is making a major splash in country radio and finally cutting through the chaff. I just wish it was songs like Parachute and Was It 26 or Outlaw State of Mind were the ones charting. That's all. Number 65, History by One Direction.
We could be the greatest team that the world has ever seen. You and me got a whole lot of history, so don't let it go. We can make some more. We can live forever.
So I have to admit, I was a little bit surprised to see this as the next One Direction song to hit the charts. Not just because it's a mostly acoustic finale cut against a surprisingly stiff drum beat that doesn't really complement the loose, hopeful vibe of the guitars, which on the bridge then become electric and seem to be building for this explosive final chorus that just falls a little bit flat when nothing really changes up about it. Come on, as cliched as it would have been, a key change would have been absolutely killer there. It would give the guys a chance to show off more of their upper register as their harmonies a little bit better. As for the content, look, as awkward as it would be in a relationship song to say, hey, you should stick together because we have history. You know what, the song is intended to console fans that One Direction will be coming back. Personally, as I said in the review, I don't really see it happening, but hey, you never know, I've been wrong before here. Number 61, Bet You Can't Do It Like Me by DLOW.
Can't walk like me, can't hit the corn like me. Hey, bet you can't drop like me, can't hit the folks like me, can't name like me, can't Dito shuffle like me. Like, no, bitch can't do it like me. Bitch can't do it like me. No, 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 bitch can't do it like me.
Oh god, how in the nine hells does this keep happening? Trust me, I'll be speaking more about this trend later this year, but it seems like every other week in 2015 we've been getting these god-awful dance crazes that recall the worst parts of mid-2000s hip-hop. And what's infuriating is how much they don't even try to hide how much they're ripping off other their dances instead of showing off the slightest hint of creativity. In other words, it's the very thin rationale why Hit the Quan is slightly better than Watch Me. This song falls in that pit as well, and I'll give the rapper DLOW at least having a slightly more assertive and controlled voice than Silento and telling people how to do his dances, but I'm not sure bleak, eerie keys are the best choice for a fun dance song with the final line about hitting a dolphin. And while I could rail against how this song is the furthest thing from unique, the painful part is that this song is set up like a challenge. In other words, it goes viral based upon people trying to beat said challenge. So speaking as a member of the YouTube community, as a YouTuber, Team Internet and all that, seriously, you're only exacerbating the problem by making this go viral. Oh wait, this is the only reason this song is here in the first place. Ugh. Okay, let's hope people get sick of this nonsense sooner rather than later, because 1 year of this, that was enough. Next. And finally, number 55, Adventure of a Lifetime by Coldplay.
You make me feel like I'm alive again.
I could not have been the only one surprised that Coldplay was back with not just a new single, but an upcoming album only a year after the release of Ghost Stories to massively underwhelming results. Now, I was mostly ambivalent on that album as a generally broad breakup record that misfired in any stab at nuance, but I was a lot more worried when I heard about the upcoming A Head Full of Dreams. Plus, because in swapping out Brian Eno for Stargate on production struck me as a monumentally bad decision. And then you take a look at the co-stars. Yes, Coldplay's been working with pop stars since Rihanna on Milo Zylota, but there was a part of me that could see Tovlo maybe working well with them, but Beyonce? Noel Gallagher? What the hell was happening with this? In any case, this is the lead-off single, and let's just agree right at the gate that more than Paradise or Sky Full of Stars, this is evidence of Coldplay selling out and selling out hard. Being as someone who likes Coldplay enough to have seen them live, they're touring with Snow Patrol, it was awesome. This is a change in sound that strikes me as completely wrong across the board. Chris Martin is at his best as a singer and a songwriter on these huge dramatic tracks like Violet Hill or Viva La Vida, or intimate ballads like The Scientist. This is him trying to play smooth and cool, and man, I don't buy it for a damn second, especially considering he's got none of the ironic detachment that Bono had with YouTube touching on dance music on pop. And it doesn't help matters that his lyrics are still very much in that broad, sweeping scope and feel very oddly out of place against this instrumentation. Yes, I'll admit, that's a catchy guitar lick that anchors the song. And yes, there's a certain rollick to the groove that can mostly work, but the bass line feels leaden, and the generally runny tones and lack of tightness in the production prevents the song from having a real funk or kick to it. In other words, if this is what I'm supposed to expect for that upcoming album, oh boy, definitely not excited for it right now. So yeah, that was the final week here. Bit of a rough note to go out on, especially considering we got our worst of DLOW's Bet You Can't Do It Like Me and the dishonorable mention of Coldplay's Adventure of a Lifetime right in a row. But fortunately, outside of that, we did get some good songs. The choice of Alive by Sia returning for the best, and Traveler by Chris Stapleton as the honorable mention, pretty easy for me too. As always, let's hope for a better next week as we head into a new Billboard year. But until then, I'm Mark, you're watching Billboard Breakdown on Spectrum Pulse.